Good morning and welcome to Melco. I don't know about you, but I am sick of the cold. It is cold here in Colorado. Here with my good friends, though, to warm us up, Scott Stingle.
Hello, everyone.
And we've got DJ Mix-a-Lot, Nate Moore over here, taking care of all of our camera angles. Nate, you want to?
Hey, guys.
There's Nate. Okay, cool. All right, so we're excited today. We are in our new applications room finally. I know it doesn't look like a lot, but Nate and Scott have been hard at work. Scott made us a new table that rolls around. We can actually put like dry erase marker on it. We'll see that here in a bit. Nate has been hanging cameras so we can get all these high definition views for all of you at home. So we are going to talk about, in this maiden voyage, we're going to be talking about backing. Backing is a huge important thing that probably doesn't get its due respect.
Yeah.
You know, it just doesn't get its respect in embroidery. And so you'll look at things in different ways, and you know, the embroidery can be good, but if the backing is bad for the material that we're sewing on, the design is going to look poor. And so before we get started into some samples that Scott's going to show us, I just want to go over briefly kind of the history of backing. Backing also is known as a product called stabilizer. So stabilizer, backing, kind of one and the two same things. There's several different types, and we'll get into that here in a bit. But before we get started on that, Nate, if you could post a link. We've got a free giveaway that our friends over at Madeira is willing to send your way. So it is a little backing chart. We'll be going through some of these items, but sign up. Nate's going to post the link. Sign up on this, and we'll make sure that you get one of these guys that have all the different types. It actually has information on it, when to use it for different products. So a lot more detail than what we can go into today. So make sure you sign up to get this freebie. Also, I just want to throw this out there. The best question asked in this, will be sending out a new package that Madeira has called their semi-professional package. We'll be talking about that a little bit later, but what this semi-professional package is basically it is a way to get a sample of the product in more of a size that you can actually use before you get an enormous roll like this. And yes, this is backing. This is not one of those things that you put against the wall and you roll your back out on. It's not quite for that, but you know, you could use it. I do it every so often if I get a kink in my back. So you know, another use for backing. But stabilizer, backing. What we need it for is when we're dealing with product like this t-shirt here, and maybe we can just zoom in on this corner here, Nate, on the ceiling. This material has stretch, and so before we hoop this, we need to have some kind of material behind it that's going to stabilize it, that's going to give the embroidery something to cement or tack into. We talk about Sam did a video on primer stitch. If you didn't see that, check it out. It's on Facebook as well as our YouTube channel, Melco Educational. But the primer stitches to kind of get a tack down of stitches to the material. But if the material has stretch in it, we need to make that material more solid for the embroidery to go against so that we don't have that stretch. And Scott, why don't you show us some samples of what that looks like in good design, gone bad because of backing, and then gone good with the right backing.
Exactly. Hello, everybody. So here's a couple of samples that we show in class. Put them under here, Nate, you can see. Is that good?
Yeah.
So the question here that we ask in class is, hey, without looking at the back, which one is cutaway and which one is tearaway? Obviously, you can see same design, same top material, just one cutaway, one tearaway. This one, of course, is cutaway. Everyone gets it right because you can see it's it's not puckered. Everything registers, meaning that the purple is underneath the white border. Now look what happens on the tearaway. We can see that's about almost 1/8 of an inch gap between the fill and the border around it. So it's very, very critical that we have cutaway for knit garments and tearaway for woven garments.
So Scott, you're telling me that design there is the same embroidery design?
It's just sewn twice, and look at the back. You can see that we have cutaway versus tearaway. Everybody would love to use tearaway because it's, as we say, rip it and ship it, right? It's so
Rip
easy.
it and ship it.
It's so easy to remove from the garment.
Huh.
But, because, with cutaway, of course, we have to cut 1/4 of an inch around it, and it takes more time, but it's just a necessary fact that when you go with knits, you have to use cutaway.
So one of the things that I used to talk about, and I'll come in here a little bit, with tearaway, it is way easier to use because, like you said, you can just tear it away.
I like it. Rip it and ship it.
Rip it and ship it. And how I used to compare that is think about it feels very much like a piece of paper. And so think about taking a needle and just poking through a bunch of paper, and that would pretty much perforate it. And so those of you who used to have stamps that were perforated and not just peel and stick, it would work very much the same way. It'll just tear away. So as it's sewing, how stable is that material if you're just literally perforating it and tearing it away? So for that tearaway, does it have a use? Yeah, absolutely, for stable materials and for insurance, if I sew it the wrong color. But if you need that better stability, it's better to have something that won't just perforate and tear away.
How about, so back on this Bulldogs for a minute, Scott. So that's just right off the machine. What do you think it would look like after it's been laundered?
It's going to pucker even worse because there is nothing that holds it stable on the backside like the cutaway does.
Okay.
So, yeah, it looks one shade of bad here, and it's going to look 2 shades out of the washer.
40 shades of bad? Or no, that's not bad. Okay.
Yeah. Amazing. So here's another sample that we use in class. Oh, one more thing. So with the tearaway, if you do use it on knits, there's a bigger problem if the design is digitized from, let's say, the outside in.
Oh,
Let's say you have a circle around the outside, you do that first. You're perforating, like Nate says, all the way around. And now when you go to do the stuff in the middle, it's basically not held in place much at all. So yeah, the digitizing.
So what you're saying is on the knits, stick with a cutaway?
Always stick with a cutaway, and on every design, like we've been preaching, please go from the center to the outside and the bottom to the top. It's going to help you.
So even on flat product, you can do that. You would suggest doing that on even flat, like left chest designs.
Everything.
Still go from bottom up, center out?
Exactly, because it could look okay when you do the knit shirt order, but the customer's going to love your quality so much they come back in 6 months and order hats. Great, now we got to edit the design, change the letters to center out, change the order. If you just have your digitizing center, or you, if that's who it is, digitized from the middle, outside, bottom up, you're all set. It only helps knits because it's going to push from the middle to the outside, so it's going to limit the puckering.
Okay.
As Nate has been going on forever, we never want to sew to an anchor point. That is really important. You can't have embroidery done, start here and push back to the middle. You want to start here and push out.
And that's outside of what backing you choose. I do have a question for you guys from Facebook.
Awesome.
If you could only supply or stock one backing, what would it be?
Well, I'll give my answer first. I'll jump right in. So if it was me and I could only, well, gosh, man, that's hard. But it kind of depends on our niche. But let's say our niche is 90%, which I think this probably is most common for most of our shops, is flat product. And flat product, I would go with like a 2.5 to 3 ounce cutaway, and I would probably stock that in white. And if I could have a secondary color, I would have black, just because it looks so nice on the inside. But if I can only have one, it would be the white 2.5 to 3 ounce cutaway. Scott?
Exactly, white 2.5 ounce, because if I need thicker backing, I can stack it. But sometimes if your garment is knit, but it's pretty stable, 2.5 is what you would want.
One piece would be enough.
Yeah, and then you could use the cutaway on wovens. I mean, a lot of times for dress shirts and stuff with poplin and all, we still use cutaway because the fabric is so thin.
I still use cutaway whenever it's going to go against skin because it's
softer.
Yeah, tearaway's itchy.
Yep.
Yeah, it can be. So, what's your choice?
I would sort of cheat. And I would do the extra stable, the thinner backing that has that little bit of reinforcement in there from Madeira. I'm a big fan of that. I think that's what you were using for Roll Against the Wall, actually.
Oh, was it?
I think so.
Definitely.
It felt good. You should try it. So.
All right, can we show overhead?
Yeah, which you'll have to come down.
Keep those questions coming, guys and gals.
This is really the kind of the best. Right?
Oh wow, look at that.
So
same design again?
Well, we bring this up in class and say which one's cutaway, which one's tearaway.
Huh.
I believe you can see this. The Dragons is very open, the fill. This is a decorative stitch fill, so it's not gonna challenge the fabric that much. But what everybody notices, you can see that the pinches are like right on the C's.
Are those C's or O's?
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay.
look here.
Oh, they're open.
There isn't any.
Nice.
So everybody notices the pinch, and then we can show them on the back. It's tearaway versus cutaway.
Wow.
All
Okay.
right. And here's another good example. I've used this in the webinar about compensation and how important it is. Pull offset is your friend. And
Let's go back in one
how about here? Yeah. So on the screen, the white or the black outline border exactly lines up with the green column stitching.
On screen being design
On
shop,
screen,
not on your screen
yes.
you're looking at right now.
So all we care about is what's happening on the fabric. And it should look distorted on the screen. That's a good thing because that's going to mean the digitizer set it up to be successful on the fabric. But you can see all the gaps, so it pushes on the end. This is tearaway on polar fleece, and it's not a good choice. You would want definitely cutaway on polar fleece. This one here, the red, the actual edge of the fill is tucked under the black border, which is correct, not far enough, but you can see how much it shrinks just by sewing it. All right, then I've done a couple here.
Wait, gentlemen, I have one more.
Cool.
Can't we use no-show mesh as a cutaway on a knit?
Yeah.
You definitely can.
Yeah.
Depending on the thickness of the knit, you may have to do like crisscross.
Yes.
Not the old rap group. For us older.
Crisscross.
Crisscross.
Oh, wow.
Didn't they used to wear their pants backwards or something? Was that crisscross?
I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know.
Anyway, Scott, let's see this no-show backing.
All right,
So
so here is the no-show. It's sort of an embossed nylon.
Wow,
It's-
I can't see it. It's
maybe
big blown
we'll just
out.
hold it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a cutaway, but it's thinner and it has sort of a grid pattern in it. It does have a grain to it. So this is kind of been termed no-show because you use it on lighter garments where they don't want to see the edge of the cutaway backing around.
is there anything worse than a white polo shirt? You see someone walking down the street and they've got a white, this is us embroidery snobs talking right now, right? Embroidery on their left chest of the white polo shirt, and you can see the shadow of that backing. Now, I just talked about cutaway backing, and that would be my go-to. But if you're doing light polo shirts, please do me a favor and the rest of the embroidery snobs in the world a favor and use no-show. No-show is not going to give you that shadow. It's going to look much better. You may not get compliments or complaints from your customers, but guaranteed your peers are going to be talking bad about you if that's your embroidery, okay?
The other thing that this is good for is stacking. So if we have very small lettering in a design, this is, as I call it, sort of like the rebar in the concrete. It helps really stabilize.
Stabilize and reinforce.
When I had a shop in Boulder in the 80s, before this kind of stuff existed, we used to use a layer of broadcloth.
I can see that.
Cutaway, broadcloth, then the material.
So it would be the woven is what's given that stability in the no-show, is what you're saying. Because when you say you go to a broadcloth, that is a woven material, and that's
Yes.
probably what you were using to get that
Holds-
stability.
Holds everything in place.
Cool.
Now, we're not going to go in, of course, we'd be here for 3 years explaining all the backings that are out there. And this probably isn't going to show, but it is
The black
called,
one.
it's called Cut Performance.
And maybe set the white one over the top of the black.
There you go. That you can show the texture of it. Yeah.
This is called Cut Performance, and it's specially designed for the performance wear out there, Under Armour type materials.
So kind of like a 4-way stretch material.
Yes, that stuff.
Man, that is, oh.
And so you use one layer up to 7,000 stitch designs, 2 layers for more than that. And this is going to make a big difference compared to just normal cutaway on performance.
When you use that on the performance wear, Scott, do you like to take the first layer and put a light spray,
To the garment.
embroidery spray adhesive to the
Yes,
garment?
they say that's not necessary. I like to do it very light though.
What I've seen, if you don't do that, the garment still, because it has so much stretch to
Yep.
it, if you don't adhere it temporarily to the garment, it has a tendency to want to do the puckering thing, even if the design is, you know, Scott,
Correct.
I think is one of the
You bet.
best digitizers in the world. I know he doesn't like me to say that, but it's true. And even with his designs, if I don't adhere that correctly, I get that puckering. So yes, it's a little bit more time to prepare the product, but at the end, the product is going to look so much better, and it's going to give you that quality that you want to be known about. Don't shortcut yourself on the small things like this.
Yeah.
And just a silly aside, if you have the time and can take the time, if you're using multiple layers, you can cut them a different distance away from your backing and feather that edge so any halo effect is diminished. But I'm interrupting you for other reasons, and I know I'm jumping around on you guys, but
That's good. We like that.
more questions.
Yay.
What backing do you recommend on unstructured hats with high stitch count designs?
So we're going to ask you, who asked that question?
Jim?
Jim, I'm going to ask you to hold on to that question because we're going to get to backings and hats and actually unstructured hats here in a little bit. So we won't forget your question, but we'll come back to that one.
Okay, and then one that we kind of have already answered, but it's good to remind, what backing for thin, stretchy fabric? Is it no-show? Is it that wonderful woven performance-y goodness over there?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, you want to answer that question?
Wow. Do samples and find out. I stretchy, you don't want too much bulk on the backside, so I guess my original would be 2 crosshatch layers of no-show.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
I'm with you on that one. If you have one shot in it, so what I mean by one shot is I always keep, if you mess up a product or you've been at the Goodwill, grab materials that are similar to what our customers are bringing us, and if you can get a sample sew out before you go on the real product, always try to do that. But if you get one shot, I completely agree with Scott. So take 2 pieces of the no-show, and when we talk about crisscross, once again, not the wrap group, we're talking about taking, and let's see if I can do a 45 with my hands today. Once again, it's cold outside, so it's almost impossible, and someone's calling me at the same time. So I'm just doing kind of like a diamond effect with the 2 pieces. Now, I wouldn't use white and black, right? We would use, when would you use black backing versus white backing?
Any garment, say darker than light blue.
Okay.
I would use the dark and then whites on everything else.
I agree.
The spray glue for the performance wear, we always talk about picking the smallest hoop that you possibly can.
For sure.
Because it's going to keep, the movement of the fabric and the registration loss to a minimum. But with the performance wear and even good digitizing and all that, you can see the smallest hoop possible. You can still see it creep inside there. It's like, well, you have no choice but to spray it. So that's good.
A couple of other options. One other question, and then we'll go into other options. But which spray adhesive is best?
They have different
They do.
penises,
So
if that's a word.
I'm gonna come in
Please
for a
do.
second. So when I was working in a screen print shop, I made the mistake of grabbing the wrong one, and
Oh.
I grabbed what they used on the boards to keep the shirts from moving when
When you pull on
would
the
be-
squeegee?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Which was a web tack, so don't use web tack. I like a mist, so those kinds of sprays are great. Madeira actually has a couple of options. I like the one with the more open time.
Yeah, that's the one that smells like lemons when you spray it. It smells really good. It's like a lemon meringue
I like
pie.
that one in case I don't get it right. I have a chance to reposition. Now, what I don't like to do is pull up and move and redo, because then I'm stretching and distorting the fabric. What I'll typically do, spray the adhesive. I'll do it one of two ways. I'll either turn the garment inside out and have it laying completely flat, spray the backing, and then lay it on there without distorting the fabric, or if I can't do that because I'm using a hooping device or whatever, I will spray the backing. I will stick my hand on the backing and lift it with just the adhesive on my pinky and thumb. I will slide it into the garment using my hand to keep the adhesive from sticking to the material. So I slide it up in, and then I'll lower
like a
my
magic
fingers, kind of, and then very gently lay that fabric down over there so that I'm not pulling on the fabric. Otherwise, you'll get kind of a distortion like this, and then when you unhoop it and get the backing,
The bunny
off of
rabbit
there,
comes
it'll
out?
go the other way.
No
No.
bunny rabbit?
No.
Okay. That's it's good stuff. The one thing to keep in mind with the embroidery spray adhesive, majority of it has about a 24-hour tack. And so the last thing you want to do is you don't want to spray and hoop a whole bunch and let them sit overnight or a day or two, because it will lose its tack, and then when you go to sew it, you'll lose the effect of that. So make sure that you don't pre-prep way too far in advance. I see a question coming.
Oh no, it's not a question. It's a snark. Michael says it's 80 degrees in Florida, so we should probably just go there.
Oh, that was Michael?
It's time.
Michael, you dog. Enjoy that weather for us.
Everybody else on the East Coast, where the storm is heading your way.
Yeah.
So it's not terrible, but it's a cold one.
This one is a little tricky. What would you recommend for a high stitch out flat design, like a 12x16 emblem on the back of a shirt? I'm really hoping you're talking about a woven, not a knit.
Yeah, that's
but
right.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. You see designs sometimes, like if we're talking a t-shirt or like a polo shirt, so something that's got stretch to it that doesn't have a woven to it that is stable. More times than not, you'll see real big embroidery on that, and the garment is just not, it's not a garment made for that much stitching.
it doesn't have a body.
It doesn't have the body, and to be honest with you, really, that's somewhere where instead of embroidery, you're trying to substitute embroidery for what should be a print. And I mean, let's just call it like it is. There's certain things that just should not be embroidered, they should be printed. If you're going to do that, and it's absolute, you have to do it, the customer wants it, and the customer knows what they want, they're always right. I would have to go back to stabilizing it and putting a couple pieces of heavy cutaway behind that, but it's going to look like like someone's got a bulletproof vest on backwards.
I'm going to argue against that. Customers are not always right, but they are always the customer. So sometimes there needs to be education. Other things you could try for that. Try subbing out for a little bit of applique underneath of it to give it the body where you need it.
And applique, explain, can you change the camera so we can see you?
Sure, that might work.
Yep.
So yeah, applique is laying down material and stitching around it. So you could stitch on that material, cut it out, and then applique that to that. You could applique down and give it that body. If not, that's like a top side of backing that you can kind of swap that out. So that might be another option. Try looking at the design and seeing if you can eliminate stitches. Think about that dragon's design where other way. Where the interior of the lettering was done as a decorative stitch to kind of open that up so that you don't have as heavy of a stitching out. And that, again, can be a tricky conversation to have. But educating without offending is...
Yeah, and it's always good, if we go back to the main camera, Nate,
Sorry.
no problem. It's always good if you can have some samples for the customer to touch, feel, taste, well, maybe not taste, but see, all those senses. If they can grab it and you can show them and say, look, here's an example of a design that's got many, many stitches in it, like what you're asking for on a shirt. Are you sure this is what you want? It's good to have some bad examples in your store or available for customers to see, so that you can get them to understand, and maybe have the same thing in a heat press. I know a lot of us embroiderers are adding the vinyl cut or the vinyl print cut, and what that is it's a vinyl that can be cut on a plotter, like a roll-in plotter. Or it can be printed and cut on a roll-in print cut, and then it's heat applied to the garment. So if you had like this dragons that was full embroidery and maybe it's looking really puckery, you could show that to a customer. You could show it in vinyl, or you could do a mixed media where maybe the big fills are vinyl, and then the like this one is soccer down below could be still embroidery.
Even the outer border, right, of dragons would be embroidery.
Yeah, so check out some of, that's what I would suggest, is try to get the customer to change his mind or her mind of what they want. Check out our mixed media videos, which are up on YouTube as well. And then also the applique stuff that Nate was talking about. We've got several videos on that as well. So some of those applications would be good, but that's a great question. I think that's one of our better questions yet. So
Judy asked, what's the name of the Madeira spray? I never remember which one's which, so I'm going to have to look it up.
We'll look it up real quick as Scott goes through some more of his examples.
We'll come through. So here I've sewed out the same design, several designs on different materials to show you. Can't zoom that.
No, that's as zoomed as we get.
All right. You might have to trust me on some of this, because
We trust you.
So when I digitized, I really disliked when my customers would sew out the design that I would just digitize on backing only. I know it's cheap, we all have it, everybody, wants to do sew outs on it. It's good to use if you have done maintenance on your machine, meaning I've just oiled everything and I need to shake it out, because I'd rather have it drip on a piece of backing than a finished garment. Or if you just need to run your machine, it's been idle for a while or something like that. But backing is not going to be like anything else that you're going to sew, especially on the jacket back designs. You can see the needle penetrations just get pulled all crazy. I mean, people would say, hey, the design you did yesterday, well, it's good, except for in the lower right corner, one of the fills doesn't line up with the border. And I'm looking at mine and it's overlapped and all that. Finally, through investigation, you find out, well, yeah, I just threw it on a piece of backing. And the order's not, you're not gonna have a backing jacket, right? So it's an unrealistic fabric. So this one here shows just on one piece of backing, things get much thinner. Overall, this is not too terrible, but it gets worse the higher the stitch count goes. Then right here, we have a piece of piqué, and we use just tearaway as the backing. It's very sketchy around the outer border. You can see some of the fabric sticking through the fills.
Oh yeah.
And then from there we move on to
Can you show us the good again? Oh, that's what you're about to do on that
going
one.
from bad to good.
Awesome.
So this is, you can't see it, but there's salvia on the top. We have the piqué, and we have a 3-ounce cutaway underneath it. Everything sits up nice.
Wow, look how nice
edges.
crisp it is. Yeah.
What a difference.
I mean,
it
even
is.
the trademark pops out a little bit more.
Yes. So.
And that's with water soluble topping?
Yeah.
Sorry, I was typing and
Right.
not paying enough attention.
The piqué kind of needs, it really benefits, as does performance wear from a piece of topping on it. The dimples in the piqué will distort your stitches. The little honeycombs or whatever you call them.
Dimples is fun.
The smaller the dimples, the better the quality is going to appear on the garment. So piqué is kind of getting to be old-fashioned, I know. Okay, and then I have another one here. So This one is just one layer of backing.
Boo! Don't ever do this.
And it lined up pretty good.
Oh.
But
Better than I was expecting.
Yeah, and the reason, because this has 9 color changes, so it does a word in both colors on the border before it moves on. So we're going to keep registration as good as we can by doing that. So, but anyway, it does. It has a little bit of a sketchy look around the black outline border.
So that's actually a great example of, if you're limited in what you can use, you can sometimes digitize around limitations.
Yes, you can, but this is not the.
It's not ideal. No, yeah, no.
Digitize it right. Let's use tearaway.
No.
Okay, so the other thing you kind of can't see is it's really puckered. It's like fried bologna is what I call it.
Yeah, it totally
bologna.
looks like that. If anybody's ever.
Then we move on to tearaway again with piqué. And we're missing registration up here as it shrunk away. We got bobbin pull.
Yep.
I left this thread here because there was 2 thread breaks when I sewed it. And so it's costing you more labor to sew on.
So you're saying that wrong backing could cause thread breaks as well?
It costs you more labor, yeah. On each one of the sew outs, well, all but one that I did on just the layer of backing, I had at least 1 thread break.
Wow.
And these are all ones I've done. So when you run them with the right backing, they don't stop. Here is...
Except when they're completed.
When they're...
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that.
Yeah.
1 layer of cutaway on the same piqué. This gets better. You can see our registration is better.
That's
around
nice.
Here.
Yep.
It's pretty good.
No thread breaks on that one?
No.
Okay.
Nice.
And then the deluxe one here, which is the 3-ounce cutaway. I also put a layer of no-show like we're talking in here. And then we use facing on the top. And this sticks forward and really what's the best of all of them.
Nice.
So, one more quick
We got a
one.
question?
Yeah, well, you guys, in challenging for the best question, we now have a question.
Woohoo!
What is the best way to embroider a large 10-inch design on a 100% polyester windbreaker that has a light fleece lining? Would you open up the lining and stitch only the polyester fabric, or would you stitch through both outer polyester and inner lining? And what stabilizers would you use for the best results?
Wow.
How many stitches in the design? Is it super just filled?
For the most part, I don't think it's going to matter on that one.
Let's just let's lay this out to everybody so they understand the complexity of this question. So we'll kind of digest it at the same time. So a windbreaker typically is going to have that nylon shell that is loose, and then with the fleece lining on the inside, those 2 pieces are not going to be adhered together. They're going to be actually separate. So it's kind of like what we were talking about with the no-show. By not applying it to the material, to the shell, the 2 are going to be separate, so that nylon shell has a real big tendency to want to pucker on you when you sew. So I mean, if you were really looking to get the best quality, and you have the ability to get in there and get in between and adhere a piece of backing, cutaway, or the no-show to the nylon shell, sew it, then remove the backing and then seam it back together, that's going to be your best bet. But if you're doing this in a production environment and pricing is a concern, you're really going to have to go back to kind of what we were talking about with the t-shirt. The material is only going to hold a certain amount of stitches before the quality starts to degrade. So look at that mixed media or mixed media combination of vinyl, print, of some kind, sublimation or something, to that windbreaker, and then add embroidery around it to get that quality that they're looking for.
You may also be able to find windbreakers that have a zippered pocket so that you can get to that.
The embroidery zipper. Yep.
Yeah.
So let's just say worst case too. I can't open it up and it's different. If the design is such that a lot of it is filled in, like you've seen me do on some of the digitizing webinars, you do that light density, like a 50 or 60 density fill. Trapunto works to square off the edge.
Yes.
Start in the center, we stitch vertically all the way to one side, walk back, and then push it out. That's going to tack those two, so it's going to, let it
So to
pucker up differently.
If that's something that you can't do, other things that I've done in the past, digitize yourself a basting stitch, which is just a run, walk, whatever, with a longer stitch length so that you can pull it out later. Go around the outside edge of everything to kind of tack it down, and then give yourself some underlay under those areas where you will be sewing, that your open areas are still open.
Cool. Yeah, great question. Who did that come from?
Margaret.
Margaret Januzzi?
No, Hines.
Oh, another Margaret Hines. Okay, good job, Margaret.
All right, can we go top down?
Yep.
Sorry.
Scott really wants to show off the tropical
I'm sorry,
frog.
I was reading.
Okay.
We got to get zoomed in closer. But so this is just on backing. Didn't turn out absolutely terrible. I went back to a color, like to orange twice, even in this small of a stitch count of a design. So registration is going to come out better. You still get some of that fried bologna look on just one layer of cutaway. Then we move on to, here is tearaway on piqué. And you can see the loss of registration. See right here, it's all clumped up on his foot. And you can't see, but take my word for it, these three paws, I guess you would call them legs, hands, frog legs.
Darts?
They're definitely loss of registration.
Oh, yeah.
Orange is hanging way out and all that. So you can have a beautifully digitized design, use the wrong backing combo, it's not going to come out good. All right, then we have cutaway with the piqué. This one turned out pretty good.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's great.
A little problem down here, not much. And then, of course, the deluxe version here. It just sits up better off the fabric. That's what the facing will allow the stitches to stay up off the fabric.
Yeah.
I usually get the question, okay, so the facing's there now, but you say it washes away. Well, when I wash it away, won't this guy look as if I didn't put it on at all? That's not the case. It sort of sets the stitches while it's being sewn, and then they stay up on top of the fabric no matter how many times it's washed.
That does not mean that if you are using water-soluble topping on a towel that you can get away without underlay. That is not what he's saying.
Yes.
Okay, so Mike, would you like to talk about some
about topping?
and toppings?
And toppings, yeah. So let's get to, who was our buddy that asked the question about the hats? Jim, I think it was Jim. Jim, so great question. So we did some sew outs. It's not a super large mass design, but it is quite a bit of stitches. Maybe we can go from up above.
Sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, hold it close.
Trying to do multiple things, yeah.
I'm
So
not disappointed with that.
so this is an unstructured hat. Let's see, my arms are almost too short to get out here. So sorry, Scott has got super long arms.
Want me to hold it? I can.
No, I'm good. Thank you, though. But this design here, what I did was I just did the one piece of tearaway. This is that black cap backing that we were talking about a couple of weeks ago. So we got some in. I think Nate ordered us some in from our buddies over at Madeira. But it just really turned out bad. I don't know if you can see this detail in the bass's mouth and face, but it's really dimpled, and just the registration around it is really bad. So to get back to Jim's question, what would I do? I would take and go back to the spray adhesive. Do we have the name of that spray adhesive by chance?
I have the part number. It's 1000 or 1100. The 1100 is the slower, the longer open time over time.
Cool. So Nate posted, but I would use that Madeira spray adhesive. And what I would do is I would take your first piece, and this was done yesterday, so the tackiness of this is already worn off. But I would take and spray on the first piece of tearaway and place it into the inside of the cap. And by doing so, we're making the cap more like a constructed cap instead of an unstructured or unconstructed cap. And so by doing that, the machine is going to sew it a whole lot better, so I can get a better look quality design across it. So that's the first piece. The second piece, I'm still going to put a second piece in there with no spray adhesive, kind of like we do with a constructed hat. And outside of doing that for an unstructured hat, why would we use backing? If backing is used to stabilize product, why would we use something on, like I've got a Richardson hat here. And a Richardson hat, the stuff that makes it structured in the front, it's got some different names. I like to call it buckram. And so if we go to the up above again, you'll notice the inside of this buckram, and I don't know if you can hear my fingernail, but this stuff is almost like, it's like a heavy, if anybody is a fisherman or fisherwoman out there, this stuff is like a 50-pound weight test line. It's just really heavy. And so if we have our thread rubbing against this, because remember that thread will take about 30 times through the needle eye, which means it's going to be rubbing against this backing here, this buckram. It's going to rub up to 30 times against that before it's laid down as a stitch. This stuff is going to rub right through polyester thread. Any thread that we use on an embroidery machine, it's just going to hack it up. So that's one of the big reasons that we use a piece of cap backing, is to give the thread something soft to lock into place with as it's being sewn down. If we go back to the main screen here. Now all caps aren't like Richardson hats where they've got that very aggressive buckram. If I take, this is a auto hat, and if I take this one, it's very light. This stuff is almost like, is it bodice? Is that what's used in dressmaking to give it shape? You dress ladies out there and men, post what that stuff is called for dresses that give it shape. It's boning or bodice, I think.
Yeah, and there's horsehair, which is a little heavier, and then there's synthetics.
So, getting back to Jim's question, Jim, try that spray adhesive one piece in, make that hat structured, and when you do it, you want to make sure that you're not getting puckers. So just like with the embroidery design, once you have it in place, work out all the wrinkles from the center out, from the bottom up to the center out, just like you want the design to do, and sew that cap. I think you'll be much happier. Anytime you're doing unstructured caps, we all have our different ways of doing things, but I take the extra time to add that little spray adhesive in the inside. Some of you, you're like, man, I don't have time to do that. I need to be more productive. Great, good for you. If you can do that and get good quality, great. But if you're having problems with quality on unstructured caps, take a little bit more time, like Scott was telling us, take a little bit more time to prep the product, get a good sew out, and then once again, we can just take and rip out one piece at a time. We can take and rip out that tearaway backing. So that's kind of on caps what we do. Structure caps, you would never want to use more than one piece of tearaway backing. The only reason that you may want to do it is if you're sewing something on the side and the side is real flimsy, you may go two thicknesses, even though you don't really need it on the crown, you may need that structure on the side. So, like this Richardson, it's really, really beefy on the side. So I probably would only do one piece of tearaway on this. But, like on this auto, it's pretty flimsy on the side where there's no buckram. So this one I probably would do two pieces of cap tearaway.
Not that that's a pro or con of any of the hat, it's just a property of the fabric.
Correct, yeah, it's thank you, Nate. Yeah, definitely nothing against the quality, it's just the type, for sure. Good point.
I got one more.
Yeah.
So last week I ran into one picture of the hat, and it was straight line text. And so this half was on one level, and then this half was on a lower level.
Wow.
Like, wow, what happened to the machine?
But not on purpose.
No.
Okay, it wasn't like an effect or anything.
No,
Okay.
it wasn't. And so what it wound up being is low-profile unstructured hats, one layer of 2-ounce tearaway.
Oh, man.
So the design starts out, in the middle, close to it, right? And it's so small stitches, so limited small movements off to one side. When it gets here and it trims, it does a machine movement back to center, and that would make the hat shift inside of the frame. So the second layer of backing is to pad it to keep it from moving inside of the
frame.
And once the second layer of backing was added, the caps were beautiful.
Wow, that's a great information. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, not related to hats. Are
Okay.
we complete with hats for the most part?
For the most part, unless
Okay.
we come back to it.
So I'm gonna come over because I'm going to fess up. There is a question about if I cannot order from Madeira because I need it yesterday. Is there something that I can pick up local?
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, there absolutely is. Just please make sure that you get spray adhesive that is meant for embroidery or sewing. Don't go
3M.
buy construction spray adhesive
No going to Home Depot or Lowe's for this type of spray adhesive. Good places, but not for what we use spray adhesive for.
Would be what I'm talking about. Yeah, I had a friend.
Did you do
did
that?
No,
No, a friend that did that. I get it.
No, I'm the one that is guilty of, instead of having masking tape or painter's tape, I had
Duct tape?
no worse.
Okay.
Gorilla tape.
Oh, ouch.
And the adhesive was brutal. So don't do that. Don't do what I did.
Yeah, and most of your fabric stores like Michael's are going to carry some kind of like sewing spray adhesive. And really what you want to do is you want to get the backing tacky enough that's going to stick, but not so tacky that it takes a gorilla to pull it away from the material. Because why? Why is it important that we don't get extra adhesive into the system?
You're going to distort as you pull out. And it's going to be gross in your machine.
Yeah, it's going
to
gum up your needle. It's going to start gumming up your hook. And so after doing that, your needle will start giving you many thread breaks. Because once again, if this is the eye of the end of my finger is the eye of the needle, and that thread is going back and forth, it's going to act like an auger or a pump almost, and keep pulling that adhesive up into the eye of the needle. And next thing you know, your needle has got this big clump, and you'll be able to physically see it, of adhesive on it.
Or depending on if you're wearing glasses or not, maybe you won't, but you can't thread your needle for anything.
Yeah.
Other comment / question. Other professional digitizers have recommended sewing their first sew outs on felt or on backing alone. And then the question was, why don't we do that? And my answer to that, well, it's way more economical. If I'm only using one piece, why waste the money on material? So I understand some of that mindset. My problem is, why waste the money on the first garment that doesn't look like I want it to because I didn't test it on fabric that is as close to my final product?
So what we do here at Melco, if you've not been to our place, if you're ever through Denver, stop by. We've got a wall of designs that between majority Scott, but there's some Nate designs on there and other people's designs, but majority Scott. We sew it on broadcloth. So broadcloth is a very cheap material that you can get at Michael's. We buy it at Joann's, I think, is where we get ours. So we'll take a piece of cutaway backing, put a piece of broadcloth down, sew that out, and then once we're happy with that design, we take it and we put it on a wall, or in case of a business, we may take and put that together with a work order. So if the customer comes back to place the order, we can pull that out of a folder, or we can take a digital copy of it and put it somewhere. So really, if it works for you, great. It's just not what we suggest. It's not a law, it's not a rule, but if you're gonna take the time to do it like the guys have said, why not do it right? That would be the question back. Why not do it right? And if it's right for you, then great. Then it's right. It's good.
Felt seems to make everything look good, is my experience. And so if you're doing a sales book, yeah, great.
Felt with backing. Felt alone,
with
not
cutaway.
so much.
With cutaway. The age-old thing is, let's say you have an order placed for knit shirts. So the digitizer wants to know the fabric. He sews it on the fabric, or should anyway.
Should, yes.
And then you get the design in. You want to sew it out and get approval from your customer. What do you sew it on?
Oh, good point.
So the choice is you sew it on a knit. Well, knits, of course, we know in embroidery do not look as good as wovens.
Mm-hmm.
So then your customer doesn't know that, and they think his quality is kind of not, it's marginal, right? You put it on broadcloth cutaway, it looks better, crisper, but then he thinks you're baiting and switching. Like, here, look how great, and then you get the order, and it's on the knits, it's not good. So what I recommend in class is sew it both ways, on a knit and on broadcloth cutaway. You say, here's what you can expect because you have knit shirts, and explain the sponginess and the move of the knit. But then when you place your hat order later, you can expect this quality, or dress shirts, or whatever you want. He knows how good it can be. He understands why it doesn't look as good on the knit, and you probably sell more hats when it comes to the woven.
No, that's great. I mean, education, right? That's why we're all here right now, is education. So don't be afraid. I think what Scott's saying is educate your customers. Don't be afraid to do that. And if you take that little bit of time ahead, you're actually promoting more product with that logo. So it potentially raises your profitability or revenue off of that one customer instead of hunting for more customers.
Used to do the sew outs and then scan them and email them because we didn't have time to send the sew out or the
Ever wanted to find a flaw in your embroidery, man, scan it.
Well, yeah, and especially if they see it at 20 inches. I found it was like a 2.5 inch design, right? And the finest embroidery under a microscope looks terrible.
All right, well let's move on. We're going to talk about toppings, and so toppings. We've got some samples here. If we can bring in the first, and it may, boy, this might not go. Is this zoomed in?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take and raise it up.
That's better, yeah.
So you can see, let's see if I can get, I'm going too far now. There it is. So you can see the fabric. You'd almost say, wow, the embroidery is just crap. Excuse my language, bad. But really what it is it's the nap or the Berber of the towel sticking up through this monogram. And so if we go to one, same design, no change, but you can see how crisp. So bad, no topping, no solving, good with solving. Look at the difference in quality. No difference in the design itself, same exact design, but look at the quality that you get by just adding that one piece of topping to it. If we can go back to the regular camera for a minute, I was actually doing some reading on social media recently, and I found we've been doing a lot of stuff, and we did a detail, and this is probably way too small for you guys to see, but if you've been to one of our shows lately, or you watched the Facebook one about small lettering that Scott did, we've been playing with size 60 needle and either 60 weight thread or 75 weight thread. And so even with the stable broadcloth, I was reading that adding a piece of topping to the material before you sew with that smaller thread helps the thread not sink into the material as much. So it, like the dart frog that you were talking about, it holds it up so that even the quality is even better. So we haven't played around with that, just something that in my spare time I was reading about. So if you're playing with small lettering, try it and see if it works. The other thing I found out about is I usually will take and lick my finger and tap the corners to hold the topping in place. So instead of trying to hoop it, which always gets kind of hard, I'm getting the frowny look.
I'm not putting my DNA on my customer shirts.
So
no.
Nate would be one of the guys who would take and you probably reuse a piece of Scotch tape in the corners. That's okay. I usually steam clean them. They're sterilized before they go out the door. So, but something to think about is using a little piece of Scotch tape on the corners to hold that in. But toppings do not have to be hooped in. Where backings, typically you want them to stabilize within the hoop. So any chance you get, you want to hoop backings in. When I'm gonna back up just a second because it's like we've been talking about cutaway. When are we gonna use tearaways? When does it make sense to use tearaways then, other than caps? That's the only time we've talked about tearaways.
Keep things cleaner. I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I found the back, let's say your machine, well, it's dusty in Colorado too,
Yeah.
compared to Midwest and East, but sometimes, yeah, if you didn't clean it, that morning, the backing can get dirty. Well, if you rip it off, at least it's not getting on the garment.
Okay.
Sometimes you can float backing, meaning, well, the garment's pretty stable, but I'd like to give it a little bit of tearaway, but I don't necessarily need to hoop it in or can't hoop it in. Slide it underneath the hoop.
So just because somebody might be asking, would you perhaps float a piece of tearaway backing under a dog collar while using a Fast Clamp Pro?
Chewing bubblegum on a
Standing on one foot.
on a unicycle.
Yes.
No. Yes, absolutely. Floating it with the fast clamp is a great idea because it's hard enough. The most important part on that dog collar is getting it taut and getting it straight in the fast clamp. And so by doing that and then adding a secondary layer that you're trying to work with at the same time, it gets really difficult. So yeah, take and make sure that dog collar is uber tight. Close your clamps down on the fast clamp, and then take and just if this is the dog collar, just take and slide between the needle plate and the dog collar. Just slip a piece of tearaway right in there, and it doesn't matter as long as it's in the area where it's going to be sewn. You're good to go.
How about the weirdest for tearaway? Black garment, white fill can be hard to cover.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can put that layer of white tearaway on top, let it sew,
Yeah.
rip off the edges before it does a border.
That is a thing.
It's a way to get coverage.
Yeah.
Diana just posted one that I was going to. She was very specific with it. I'm going to make it a little bit broader. Anything that you really can't or don't want to get scissors into. She mentioned backpacks, pockets on attachés,
Yep.
anything like that.
Yep.
Tearaway's your friend.
Yeah, and those materials are pretty stable. And so the other reason that we might want to use a piece of tearaway in there is if anybody in the world, and anybody that's done embroidery for a certain amount of time has had this where you've made an oops and you need to take out a design. If you don't have a piece of backing in there, you're taking that Peggy stitch eraser or whatever you're using and you're going right against the product. And you just might as well chalk it up as a loss because you're going to give yourself even a bigger headache. So if you have that piece of backing in there, at least you're going against the piece of the backing instead of against the product itself.
And on structured hats, that backing sort of helps keep the buckram from showering the bobbin, the hook and stuff so bad also, and it helps it slide over the seams better than without it.
So that's kind of toppings, and I know that I'm looking at my watch, we're going a little late, so I want to hurry up through a couple of these things.
We've got one more question that I'm going to make you answer anyway.
Okay.
Is there ever a situation that you use more than one layer of water-soluble topping?
Yeah, so...
I don't have it. The sample, right?
Yes. So in the case of something that's got a lot of Berber or a lot of looping in it, and you don't want to do that primer stitch that Sam talked about a couple of weeks ago, you may want to lay down multiple thin pieces of the solvy, or they make the solvy in a thicker material that we've done like freestanding lace in. So you sew it on this water-soluble material, and then you just take it and put it like into, some people will take it and put it into a bowl. Some people will take a wet sponge and just sponge it and then let it sit and dry. But that water-soluble stuff can be used actually as a kind of a material to sew like a freestanding lace. I think I saw some stuff on social media about that. So
remember when we sewed the floor car mats?
Oh yeah.
So that stuff was like Berber that was crazy. I mean, we even used, it was black carpet, black backfills, right, to put the letters, because even 0.4-inch letters are not going to stay up on something that was that thick.
Yeah, it was like a 1/4 of an inch of fuzz sticking up on top of that.
Yeah, so we did it in a slim line because you can't hoop that.
Right.
And put
This
thicker
was
stuff up.
This was before the
Fast clamp. Fast clamp could work with it. Slimline would work too. So yes, so hold your questions for a minute, Nate. Back away from the computer for a minute, mister.
The corner.
All right. So the next one we're going to talk about is we're going to go back to a backing, and we're going to talk about a finisher. And so once again, the if you're signing up for this, Madeira is graciously, I should say, going to send you one of these packs that have all the different backing toppings, specialty stuff that we're talking about right now. This will help you figure out what you need and get you going if you don't already have this. If you already have it, it'll be great to have a second one because I don't know about you, but I open it up and I lose the most important ones. So I'm like, dang, where'd they go? So we get you another one. But we're going to talk about finishers. So on the back, after we've sewn the design, we've got this piece of cutaway. And this stuff is pretty soft. This is a heavy cutaway. But the embroidery itself is still pretty abrasive against the skin, especially like
Infant wear.
Infant wear. So we have a new customer of ours, actually been about a year now, a company called Dillard's. I don't know if anybody knows Dillard's out there, but Dillard's Retail is actually using Melco product to sew on infant wear, do monograms on. And so they want a soft feel against the infant itself, him or her. So they're using, and I'm going to forget the name of this stuff.
Finisher.
Easy Finisher. I think I'm going to throw easy in there because it seems like everything that Madeira has is easy. So Easy Finisher, and so what you do is it comes in a sheet like this, and you just take and cut a small piece off, and so one side has got bumps on it, and that's like a heat applicable glue. And so you take and cut yourself a small piece. This might be a little bit too big. And then you take and apply it via either a heat press, and I think it was 260 for 15 seconds, or you could use an iron to apply it if you didn't have a heat press. So check out this Easy Finisher. It is really nice because the other side of it is very soft. So if you were here with Scott and I and Nate, I'd take you to lunch, and I would let you feel this and see how soft the two are.
Just do me a favor and make sure that heat won't damage the fabric that you're applying that to.
Good point. So yeah, always, anytime you do heat or even the spray adhesive, test, if you can test, like we talked about before, test on a sample, just to make sure that like that spray adhesive, when you apply it to like a real delicate satin, it might leave a stain. And so always test it when you're dealing with kind of funky fabrics. That's a good point, Nate. Any other questions?
You told me not to look, so I quit looking.
Okay, now we're back to questions. As Nate's looking those up, I really appreciate you guys coming by, saying hi to us. We really enjoy you guys being Melco customers. Any comments on future sessions that you'd like to see on Facebook Live, please continue to post either through this session or just on the general Melco site. We're keeping track of those. We're making sure that we hit them as priorities hit. But yeah, anything else, Nate?
No. Awesome. Other than questions about free lunch that you offered.
Oh, free lunch. Okay, Nate's buying today, so we'll meet at where we meet, Snarf's. If you know Colorado, you have to have a sandwich at Snarf's. So free shout out to Snarf's. Once again, a shout out to Madeira. Madeira, thank you for being great partners. Thank you for taking care of our customers so well. And once again, Melco customers, thank you for being awesome. And and stay warm. I'm cold right now.
We'll see you next week.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.